Hey, it's Tim here. In today's video, we're going to be looking at some logical functions, specifically the if, then, else, and or functions inside of Tableau. Now, these are some of the most used functions. In fact, when you learn Tableau, this is probably the most fundamental function you can pick up. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking them down and I'm going to be showing you how they work. Okay, so now to set this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to a previous mock data set that I'd used before. I'm going to put a link in the description so you can have a go at this yourself if you'd like to. I'm going to hit Excel here and I'm going to connect to the mock data set. I'm going to hit open and we're pretty much good to go. Now, this data set is essentially about film genres and roughly how much revenue they're generating in each country. The values aren't realistic, it's just a sample data set. So let's go ahead in here to sheet 1 and we're pretty much good to go. Now, if I drag genre onto rows and then country just in front of genre, we get this nice hierarchy and we can start to understand the structure of our data. You can see that the genre field has this pipe separator where there is more than one type of film in the same genre. And then I can bring the revenue field here and put it next to ABC. And you can also see that we have some null values. Essentially, we have some values that weren't entered into the database. So they're not nothing, they're not zero, they're just null. Okay, so we're not going to solve those problems right now. Maybe I'll show you how to do that a little later on. But what I want to now do is open up the calculation window to show you how to write the first if expression. So let's go ahead in here and just type in if. And when we do that, you see that it auto completes. And if I select that, you'll see that on the right hand side, it shows us a summary. So Tableau is always trying to help you to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Now, if I look at this on the right hand side, it gives you an example of how this expression should be written. But I actually think it's better to think of an if expression in another way. Think of it as if you're asking a question of Tableau. So for example, if I just put this in a comment block by just doing this. You can also use a new comment blocking feature in 2020.4, but we're just going to do a single line comment and we're just going to say if genre equals to action, then make it null. Otherwise, keep the value. Okay. So this is a basic thing we're going to do. We're going to basically create a condition that does a few things to the data set and it's going to make it easy for us to work with because essentially I want to remove the values that relate to action. So let's go ahead here on a new row and you'll see that at the moment the calculation contains errors because we haven't written anything. So let's go ahead and actually write something. So now let's start typing if, hit enter, and now what we can do is type our expression. Now our expression is essentially some sort of logical check against the data. And in this case, we're checking genre equals to action. So the two things we have to be aware of is that genre is a string field. And we also have to make sure that the thing we're checking matches exactly to something we have in our data set. So if I just highlight that for you, if I just go here to the square, you can see that genre here is a string and action is spelled specifically this way. And we're going to need to make sure that both of those make it into our calculation in the correct manner. So now I'm going to go ahead and do that straight away. So let's just go in here and type in genre and you'll see that this comes up and you can see that it also says here that it's a string with the ABC notation just to the left here. You can just see that there. And now that I've selected that, I can then say equals. And then to get action in here, if I just typed action, even though it matches the same spelling as our data set, this wouldn't work because I need to write a string in here. So let's go ahead and put a brackets in front of that, sorry, speech marks in front of that and do that again. And then now we've closed that off. Now that's going to check the right thing. Okay, so now we've got our condition. We've got our sort of thing for it to check. Now we need to tell Tableau what we want it to do. So if the genre equals action, then make it null. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do exactly that. I'm just going to type in then and then type in null. Okay. Otherwise, keep the value. Okay, so to say otherwise, we essentially need to type in else. Okay, and now that we've done that, we just need to refer to the thing that it should be. So in this case, this is actually the revenue field. Let me just go ahead and show you this again. The revenue field is the thing that we're working with. Okay, and this is actually also what's in here. If I just sort of show you, this whole column is basically the revenue field. So we need to make sure that this then says revenue, not sum of revenue, because we're just doing a basic row level calculation here. But we basically just need to refer to that. And then now that we're done, we just need to hit end to tell us that we've stopped asking questions, hit enter. And now you'll see that the calculation is valid. So let's just go through that again. If the genre equals to action, which is a string, which is why I've got it in speech marks, then null, else revenue. So essentially, if the genre is action, make this null. Otherwise, just return the value that's there in the first place. Notice I didn't type this properly, but Tableau is still quite permissive of how I've typed it. You can also just write it in like sentence case and it generally will still work. But now I'm going to call this new revenue. Okay, and hit apply. And then whilst this calculation window is open, I'm actually going to drag that in here. So you can see that I don't have to close my calculation window for this to stop working. I'll just drop it in there. And now that you'll see, if you look very, very closely here, you'll see that action is actually null. So our new revenue calculation is doing the job that it's supposed to do. Now, just to show you that this is dynamic and you can change this, I'm actually going to go in here and change this from action to, let's say, action pipe comedy. I need to find the pipe character on my keyboard. Oh man, that's a real tough ask to do this whilst I'm recording live, but I think that's the one. And then comedy, do that there. And now what we should see is that this value will come back and this value will go null. So let's hit apply. And that's exactly what's happened. So you can see that change is happening. This is our if and statement working correctly. So just to summarize the basic function, you need to understand that this if is essentially starting the logical expression, that then essentially starts the bit of the question where we're saying what to do. And once we've figured out what to do for everything else, this is how you define what's going on. And so this is really good if you just want to ask one question of Tableau, if you're just going to want to give it one condition. But then the next thing might be that you want to give it a range of condition. And that's where the next sort of tweak to this comes in, the ELSEIF statement that allows you to keep asking questions. And that's what we're going to cover next. Okay, let's get stuck in. Okay, so we've written a basic function. Now let's make this a little bit more complex. Let's say that I want to check if something equals to action and comedy. Okay, so action and comedy as one genre and action as well. Okay, how do we do that? Well, there's a couple of ways to do it. You can either do it the way I just said it, which is to use an and expression to check if something is also equal to something else, or we can keep asking questions. So let me show you the first and maybe simpler way to understand this, okay? Over here where I said else, essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. Oh, I just copied it there by mistake there. So if I go back here and I just say where it says else, revenue, essentially after this, we basically have an opportunity to keep asking questions, okay? So if the genre equals action comedy, then nulls, okay? But what if here I do this? I put this on a new line, and instead of just saying else, I say else if, and then hopefully you see where this is going. I can now ask the next question. So I'm a bit lazy, as you all know. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy this exact statement. I'm going to put it right here, okay? Because now I'm about to check the next thing, okay? And then I'm going to go on to a new line and put the else that was there before here. So essentially, the last time I check something, I always have to end this with an else statement. Notice this calculation is valid, but we're not done yet. We always have to end the last question with a single else, not an else if. You can't just keep writing else if. But if you want to ask another question, then you just keep on going with else if. So if you see where this is going, I'm going to add a couple more questions into this. But the reason I'm copying and pasting is because I'm using the calculation I've already written. I'm trying to save some time. And so now we're in a good place. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to ask that question of action. Okay, we'd already done that before, but now you can see that happening. And then what I might do is I might also do something here in the view. So action, adventure, and drama. And now let's really test my spelling here. So let's go adventure. I now know where the pipe character is, and the what were we doing? Drama. Here we go. Okay, so I didn't do a capital D, so I've already failed the spelling test. So action, adventure, drama, then null. So what should we expect to see? Let's just highlight what we're going to see first. I'm going to expect to see action and comedy as null. So that's this one over here, which is already null. Action should be also null. So the value on the right should be null here. Then action, adventure, and drama should also be null. So what we're expecting when we hit enter is for those rows to be empty essentially on this right-hand side new column that we've created. Let's exit out of that, hit apply, and you'll see they all go blank. So this is how you ask multiple questions, okay? This is how you sort of start to stage things. But this is how you use else if. And, you know, I've seen some really nasty things, okay? I've opened up workbooks where there've been like something silly like, 50 ELSEIF statements in a row because they're 50 elements inside of a dimension, and so people are just asking the ELSEIF question for every single variant. I've also seen this used to clean up data sets. Let's say you've got a category that's misspelled. You can essentially change the spelling of that category with a modified category calculation. Okay, so whatever you do here, you just got to remember that this is the skeleton framework for asking questions. It doesn't limit what you can do, okay? Because what I could do is I can always replace this null statement with a whole calculation, okay? I can literally do this. It's quite common for people to do this to make it easier to read their calculation. Or they'll say then, they'll open up sort of a double space here, and then they'll go up one line, and then they'll indent just so that the question they're asking is actually there. And then, you guessed it, some people will even do this. If, and then start asking another if question inside of this else if statement, okay? So you can nest these things to create really complicated logic. But I always say to people, like, try and solve that in data prep tools if you possibly can, because then it makes this aspect so much easier to deal with. But if you can't solve it, and this is the only tool you've got to fix a problem, then this is where you should do it, okay? So just remember, you can turn any of these sort of actions that you do after a then statement into a whole calculation. You could do an LOD, you can use any of the other functions we talked about previously. You're just simply stipulating how Tableau should treat that portion of the data that you've defined right here, okay? So that's one way of basically asking multiple questions. Now, the other way is the more natural way. That is using something like and or statements, okay? And this is a more natural way because that's how we talk today. When you go to someone and say, hey, I'd love to see this and this, or I wouldn't mind seeing this or that, okay? That's how we talk naturally. So this is another way you can sort of build the question. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm probably going to just leave this as null here. I'm going to make this valid. I'm going to hit apply, and we're just going to leave it as is so we can open it later on. I'm going to hit OK, and now I'm going to open up a new calculation. Okay. So for this one, I'm also going to call this and or revenue. Okay, because we're basically going to try and do some basic calculations with this. And so we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my question right at the top. So I want to say if genre equals action or action and adventure, then null, else revenue. And you can see I almost fell into the trap myself. I'm writing it as if it's a Tableau calculation. Then null, otherwise, let's just write this like a human being. You can see I've been using Tableau for too long. Otherwise revenue, just to keep it sort of, correct. Obviously, it's going to complain about a syntax error because we haven't written anything. But now I think we're ready to do this. So let's go ahead and do this. If genre, okay, let's just make sure this is auto-completed, equals, and then what we want to do is action, again, like we did before. I can't spell, you all know that. So we should turn that into a meme or something. If genre equals action, and then or action and adventure, so one or the other, okay, then let's type in the or statement. You can see that Tableau automatically completes that. Action or, and now this is a slightly tricky bit. I have to go and ask the whole question again. Now, Tableau is not smart. I can't just say action or, and then the next thing. I have to say if genre equals action or genre equals action / adventure. Yeah, I'm just going to put it like this, and then we're going to do one more for drama so we can actually see the change. Okay, then, so we've done our or statement, then null, else, revenue, like exactly as we did before, and then we're going to end that statement, okay? And now that's a valid calculation. So let's just break this down into slightly more sort of easy to digest thing. So let's say this, if a genre equal action, I'm going to hit enter here, or genre equals action and adventure and drama, then null, else, revenue, end. So by doing it this way, what I've done is I've made it much easier for someone to come in and just understand this as a basic question. In fact, I'd almost do this. I'd almost put this in on a new line, and then you could format it like this so that it's easier for someone to just break this down, yeah, into its own sort of setup. So when someone comes in to edit this, they know that all they're really dealing with are these sections of the calculation. I think I just put one tab too many. I can't get that perfectly aligned. It's really annoying me. But if someone comes into this like this, it's suddenly easier for them just to change this, okay? They know exactly what's going on. If they don't need the OR statement, they can just get rid of that in one bulk, and it makes it so much easier to work with. So this is one way you can ask the question, and let's just hit apply so that it turns up here, and or revenue. I'm going to put it right next to our new revenue, and you can see that action exists, which is there, and it is also null, okay? It's actually over here. I forgot to change the order, so let me drag this down here on the bottom of this measure values pane, and now you can see this is our and or revenue. I'm going to expand this so we can see the names more clearly. There we go. That's a lot better. So now you can see new revenue and or revenue are doing the same thing. And the key thing here is action and adventure or drama should also be empty, okay? And that was the same one we used before. So you're probably thinking, hey, Tim, come on, how can I know this works? So let's change it to drama and add an extra pipe and add war, okay? And now this time and or revenue should have the value here and not, the value here and not and or revenue war. So there you go, you see that switched around and now pretty much good to go. So that's one way of using the OR statement to ask more complicated question. But here's the thing, the OR statement works specifically if one or the other statement is true. Only one of them has to be true for this to function properly. So if you say genre equals action, but there is no other genre that says action, adventure, and drama, let's say there's no genre here called fish. So let's type in fish. Let's not type a fish, hit apply. The function's still going to work, okay? Because only one of these has to match. Now, watch what happens when I say and, okay? Let's type in and. So there isn't a genre that says action, but there isn't a genre that says fish. So now that I've done that, let me hit apply and see what happens. You see, our action category now returns the value. There is a genre called action, but there isn't a genre called fish. And so this whole statement doesn't match, which means it goes on to the next line and returns the revenue. It doesn't do this, which is what we asked it to do if both of these are true. Okay. Now, for the more attentive of you, you'll notice there is also another big problem with this calculation, is that this could never be true. There is no way in this data set that any single row can both simultaneously have a genre called action and a separate genre called fish. Even if I chose another value that did exist, for example, action, adventure, and sci-fi, it couldn't simultaneously have the same values at the same time because they're on different rows. So the other catch with the AND function is you have to make sure you are checking different things. And that's where here in the second one, we actually have to change this to check a different column of data or a different condition. It could be a different expression, but it just has to be different in some way to this first item. Because if you're checking for something that is essentially going to happen on the same row, then this AND function will never compute anything back. And so nothing will ever match. So let's change this one here to country. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if the country equals France. Okay, and what I will do is not double equals, single equals. I'll just do this, FARANC. Shout out to anyone watching the video from France. So here we are. If genre equals action and country equals France, then return null, otherwise revenue. Now, in order to do this, what we have to do is go to the action area and just select keep only. There's 3 items which just have action. So let's keep only. And now you can see we get France, Japan, South Africa, United States. We actually had 4 items. I think I was already selecting one, and so there's 3 more. So now here, if we go and check this, genre equals action and country equals France, what we should see is a null here on this line. So let's go ahead, apply. And now you see the AND function is working. So the AND function allows you to check 2 different things. Also note again, this is again quite permissive. I didn't put the square brackets. I always like to put the square brackets just because that's how Tableau itself types it. But if you just type it as a word and spell it exactly like the column name, Tableau will sort of let you get away with it. So you'll see that still works. So that's the and or or function. Essentially, they do two different things. An or function lets you check items within the same dimension, as well as other conditions that can be across multiple dimensions. But the and function won't let you check the same thing if it happens to happen on the same row. In this particular instance, we're writing only row level calculations. Essentially, this is not aggregating anything. There's no sum here, there's no average. We do aggregate the eventual values here on the left hand side, but we're not doing that in our calculation. So at a row level, there's no way that you could ever have two genres on the same row, if that makes sense. So that is the if, and, else, ELSEIF, and the or function sort of covered in one video. Now, there is one more if function that I'm just going to quickly sneak into this, if that's okay. And that is essentially the if null item. So if I just type in if, you'll see that there is this if null, and actually there's also the IIF. So I never know how to say this. If someone knows how to say this correctly, let me know. It's kind of like if or IF, or I don't know. How should you say double IF? Who knows what that should be called? Because there does need to be a different name so you can sort of name it appropriately when you're talking to people about it. But I'm going to show you those two next. We're going to get stuck in and just very quickly show you how those works. They don't take long to cover at all. And in fact, the if function, the second one here, is actually a sort of a super speedy hack for writing the slightly longer versions that we've been writing all along if you're only going to be checking something small. Let's go ahead and try that out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to close this calculation. I'm going to open up a brand new sheet. I'm going to build out the same view, country, genre, and revenue. I'm going to bring the old value for revenue that we had. Okay, now to try this first one, so the if null, let's create a calculated field, and let's just go in here and type if. I'm just going to double click if null, and it will bring it into the view for us. And then we're just going to check revenue. Okay, and basically what this allows you to do, if you look at how it's been written on the right and here on the left, it's telling you, so it's basically checking the first expression. If this first expression is null, then you just enter a comma and then you tell it what it should be if it is null. So if null, then just put in a 0. Okay, and I'm just going to call this revenue if null. Yeah, so let's just go in here and do this, and you can see the calculation is valid. Hit apply, and now you'll see that that's in there. Let's drag it into our view. Let's make sure it goes into the box, and now you'll see, especially in this particular row, let me just annotate this for you. So in this row here and in this row there, you'll see that it's actually returning a 0. So it's a lot simpler and it's a lot easier than writing something like this. This is actually what you would have written if revenue. In fact, that's not what you've written. You would have said if is null. Is null. In fact, let me just do this. This is what you would have written to get the same result. Let me just comment that out so you can see the actual if is null. There you go. Is null revenue. So you can see the actual calculation. If is null revenue, then 0 else revenue. Okay, end. So this is what you would have written to do the same thing, and you can see how much shorter and efficient this is. It's just much easier to write. It does exactly the same thing. If I hit apply, you'll see the same result comes back out. Okay, so that is a very, very sort of nice thing to have and be aware of. If all you're doing is checking if something is missing a value, you can just very simply replace it. You will also remember that this actually does exactly the same thing as the function we did before, which is the ZN function, which essentially goes and looks after nulls for us in our data set. So again, that's another thing you can do if you sort of want to optimize for this particular check. There's 3 ways of writing the same thing in one. So that's the if null function covered off. Now let's have a look at the double IF. I'm just going to call it the double IF function. So let's go hit apply and hit OK to close that off. And now that's in the workbook. I'm going to have this workbook in the same folder as the mock data that you're downloading, so you can go ahead and download that too. Okay, now the next calculation we're going to write is create a calculation field. We're going to keep everything as is, and this time I'm going to go in here, type in if, and you'll see that this double IF is just right there. I'm just going to bring that in, and this now has 3 parts. Essentially, this allows us to write an if then else statement in basically 3 expressions. So the first thing is the test. So I'm going to do a little check. So just say genre, yeah, equals action. Let's do this, action. okay? And instead of writing then, all you need to do is a comma, okay? And now you just need to say what would happen if this is the case. So in this case, I'm just going to write null, okay? And then the else statement comes after the next comma. And in this case, we're just going to do revenue, okay? Just to keep that nice and simple. And then what I'll do is I'll call this IIF revenue. Spell that correctly. And now that's basically the statement. And it basically saved us the trouble of having to write one of the previous functions we did. So if I just go in here and pick out the new revenue here, if you actually write a calculation and you put your cursor into it, it shows you what's inside of that calculation over here on the right side. So you can see we built this out a little bit, but you see we had to write if genre equals action, whatever, comedy, then null, else, revenue, end. And this just allows us to avoid having to do that. You can't do multiple checks, but if you're only doing one check, this is the much faster and efficient way of doing it without sort of getting yourself in a twist. So that's pretty much it for the if functions, the IIF, IIF even, that's an athletics association. I think that's an athletics association, but nevertheless, this is a very nice, simple function you can use. The if statements, use them all the time. You know, I probably use this function 2 or 3 times a day when I'm deep inside of Tableau workbooks daily. And if not, I use it to fix very quick problems. I sometimes even use it to create filters in workbooks. I use it to create conditional coloring sometimes. It's a very functional, very useful function that if you don't know how to use this, you're going to struggle with Tableau. It's literally a core foundational function. Everyone needs to know how to use this. If this is the first thing you learn, great. If you've just started Tableau and this is where you are and you understand this, you're going to be great with Tableau. Okay, that's pretty much it for the video. This has been a little bit of a long one, but I didn't want to sort of bring out all these sort of side topics, and so I've covered a whole bunch of functions in one video, hence the length is a little bit longer. And hopefully you go off and find new ways and exciting ways of using this. In a lot of these videos, I'm keeping the explanation simple and in tables. I'm not building visualization, because if I start to add in the complexity of building visualizations as well, these videos will go on for half an hour and 40 minutes. And to be honest, there's lots of other people doing whole built out examples on YouTube for you to go and find out. But if you're just getting started, you just want to understand the fundamentals, this is where to be. Okay, thanks for watching. You know what to do at the end of the video. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe, please like, please share. And if you haven't, let me know in the comments what you'd like to see instead. So I am working through a whole load of content. At the moment it's functions, so please definitely let us know what you'd like to see and we'll get there in the end. All right, thanks for watching.